Welcome to Over 40, Fabulous and Pregnant. I am your host, Jamie Massey, and you're listening to episode 89. If you are looking for pregnancy stories of women over 40, you've come to the right place. And today on the show, we have Alice on to share her pregnancy journey at 44. In this episode, Alice is an author, so she shares her book called Soulful Pregnancy at the end of the show that just came out on June 21st. I'll make sure to link that in the show notes to be able to purchase that from Amazon. And Alice was not always someone who knew she wanted to have children. So she shares her journey to her wanting children. And in this week's listener feedback comes from Audrey over on Instagram. Audrey says, I love your podcast. It resonates with me so much on so many levels. Almost 43 and 33 weeks pregnant with a miracle baby girl. Love from Oz. Audrey, thank you so much for that note. I love that we're the same age, but you're just a few weeks behind me. Congratulations on your miracle baby girl. Wishing you a smooth delivery, Earthside, and wishing you the best from Texas. Just a reminder, as we are here at episode 89, which I am super proud of, but that also means we only have one more show before I go on maternity leave. So episode 90 will be the last show before maternity leave. I'm not sure how long my leave is going to be, but I really plan on to pop back on with updates and what's going on with me and the baby. I'm thinking a few months, but I'm not sure, but I will totally keep you updated. And I am 37 weeks pregnant, and I'm back to feeling exhausted. And my ankles are just about always swollen. Besides getting everything ready, including a guest bathroom, we have been really dedicated to the spinning babies routine. At our last appointment, we found out he is still breech, which just makes me so sad. We just finished day 11 of the spinning babies routine. It's like, I don't know, 5 different, I wouldn't call it exercises, but you do 5 different things, 5 or 6 different things, and you do it a certain amount, and you do more as the days go by. And day 6 is supposed to be this turning day for baby, but we have passed that 2 times now. So it takes like over an hour also. But we've also been swimming and floating in the water, just like on my belly, which really gets him moving. So as an alternative option, we are looking at doing acupuncture and maybe even having a doctor flip him while he's inside of me. And I'm really hoping he just turns on his own, because I've heard having a doctor do that can be so painful that you have to have an epidural. But it's funny because Alice talks a lot about this, and I see so many parallels in our story, it's kind of humorous. But other than that, my bag is packed. I do need a bigger suitcase, so I'm almost packed. And my husband's cousin got us matching t-shirts, and I think we're going to wear them home from the hospital. It was such a sweet idea. But for my gestational diabetes diagnosis update, at our last appointment, I told her I didn't want to test anymore because my numbers are always in range. Over the last, 2.5 months, that I have been testing after I eat, my numbers have been over 120 one time. So I'm like, this is ridiculous. I don't see a point in this. And of course, she reminded me I did fail the test. I do have the diagnosis, but she suggested that I just do testing for my fasting numbers. And okay, sometimes in the morning, my fasting numbers are a hair high. She says she wants them to be 95. So sometimes they're like 97. One time it was 101. And like, that is it. So I agreed. I was like, okay, fine. I will test in the morning. And so it's been really nice. I think I've done it 2 days now. No, it's been almost a week. So that has been a nice load to get off my shoulders and not like worry about it. She did also tell me to stop doing the primrose oil, which is part of one of the birth prep, which I totally get it. I don't want to go into labor with a breech baby. But other than that, things are great. I'm really excited to meet him and hold him in my arms. Oh my gosh. But with that, ladies, let's get into Alice's pregnancy story at 44. Alice, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you for having me.
And today, Alice is joining us to share her pregnancy story at 44. But Alice, will you share a little bit about yourself before we begin?
Yeah, no problem. My name is Alice Grist. I'm an author of books and creator of cards, oracle decks and tarot decks. I'm also, of course, most importantly, a mother of 3 children now. So my eldest is almost 12. She'll be 12 in a week. And my youngest is 9 months in a couple of days, and an 8-year-old in the middle. I'm from the UK. I was born here, but my mum is actually American. She's from Kentucky and moved over here when she was in her 20s. So I have quite a lot of family over in Kentucky, and we get over when we can. And I spent quite a lot of time in the US as a child. And I'm married.
And for your story, will you kind of brief us on how your pregnancies were at 33 and 38?
Right. Yeah. I mean, each one has been completely unique, I guess, and really, really different from the other. My first pregnancy at 33 came after, well, I guess initially as a younger woman, I didn't actually think that I wanted children. And I don't know whether that's something the listeners would be able to identify with, but for a long time, it just wasn't, I wasn't one of those little girls who fantasized about babies. I just wasn't. But that, I don't know. Well, no, I do know what changed. So I'm a spiritual writer, and I kind of write about different experiences of spirit. And one of my first books was investigating all kinds of different alternative spiritualities and faiths. And I went and did a past life regression just out of curiosity to see what came up.
How old were you?
I guess it was just a little bit before that first, well, it was a couple of years before that first pregnancy. So I was late 20s, early 30s. And I was terrified actually about the past life regression. I wasn't sure what would come up. But actually what did happen, it felt very soothing. It was very lovely. And it took me back to a life. And I say a life loosely. I don't know. It was either a life or a collective experience or something that was in a story within me that needed to come out. And it was all about how in a past life I'd been a nun, and I'd worked in like an orphanage, I suppose, but it had felt really exhausting, and it had been really like, oh my God, just constantly looking after people's babies. And it really, this past life experience felt really powerful. It felt really real, and kind of, it validated something within me, which was that I'd always, as a younger woman, thought, I don't want children because it's just hard work. It's just hard work. I was so connected to the idea of being such hard work. And actually that past life experience kind of made me think, okay, maybe this is coming from some other place, some either mythical place or some energy within me or within the culture around me that perhaps thinks that babies are just hard work. And for some reason, that experience cleared that for me. And it was not long after that I did start to become quite compelled to be broody and to want to have a child. And it just shifted something completely. which was really unexpected. And so with my first pregnancy, I guess I'd kind of moved on. I'd grown. I'd gone from being as well a younger woman who was in a relationship with the same husband who I'm with now, but he was in bands, and so we lived this kind of party lifestyle, and I'd stopped. I was no longer interested in that, and so I was giving way to this more mature version of myself that wanted to have a family. And so it was a few years into that that I'd kind of made that leap from, I guess, the younger parts of adulthood that are still kind of teenage remnants through to being a young woman or younger woman who wanted to have a family. And so we started trying for my first child. Interestingly, I felt like her energy was around me for a long time. And I don't know if that's something that any of your listeners will be intrigued to hear, or maybe they've experienced themselves. And sometimes it's nice to hear somebody else say it, but I very much felt her with me for quite a few years before I even conceived her. And when I look back on that, it does feel like the same energy as that I now know as a 12-year-old young woman who feels so grown. She was definitely, there was something in the ether. There was some, and that's my personal spiritual belief. She was there, she was making herself known, and she wanted to come through. So when we did start trying, it didn't take very long. Maybe a few, I can't remember exactly, but it was fairly quickly that we conceived her, Ivy. And that was, another magical thing that happened with that pregnancy. And I wonder if it was because it was my first, and you can give your first pregnancy a lot more attention than you can the latter ones, I think, because of the fact that you've got nothing much else to concentrate on other than work and life. But I was doing a course in shamanic and magical kind of things. And I'd go every Sunday and we'd sit in a group, in a class. And the very first one, we did like a shamanic meditation that took us into the underworld. And when I was in this underworld place, which is, of course, in your mind and kind of visualizing it, I experienced this energy of a lion come running up to me and jump into me. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm pregnant. And it was the next day that I went and took a pregnancy test and discovered I was pregnant with this little lion energy child. Who she's very lion energy. So that was like, it was epic. That first pregnancy obviously was epic. And then I went on to, for many people, I think when you're pregnant for the first time, you definitely feel like you're the only woman who's ever been pregnant ever.
Yes.
And that's a really lovely thing, actually.
Yeah. Did you know that she was already a girl? Like
I felt very certain. I think once I was first pregnant with her, I realized that I was so skewed towards her being a girl that I tried to convince myself that she could be a boy, just so that I could, if she was a boy, that I wasn't disappointed, which, because I'd had my heart set on something. But of course, she did turn out to be a girl, which was no big surprise. Although she does have quite a masculine energy to her. She's quite rambunctious. Bless her. But yeah. So then she came along and we kind of had first baby and just fell completely head over heels in love with her. And it was actually filmed for my whole pregnancy. So much went on around this pregnancy. It was filmed for a TV show called She's Having a Baby, which if people want to look up on YouTube, I think you can still watch it on YouTube. It was filmed for a UK, I think it was for More4. It's the name of the TV station. I can't remember now. It was such a long time ago. But it was called She's Having a Baby. I think it was episode 2 with myself, Alice Grist. So you could Google it. You might be able to find it. But that pregnancy was filmed.
Oh, such a cool record to have.
Yes. And it's weird because when I watch that show back, I can see the difference between myself prior to having her. I feel like I'm very pent up, and I'm very conscious of how I'm appearing and how I'm coming across. And until that baby's in my arms, and then it's like all that falls away. And I can see it for myself. And I know for myself as well that having a baby, particularly that first one, it shifted me from being more self-conscious, more hyper-aware, more trying to fit in, more trying to be a certain version of myself, to then having her. And then suddenly I just felt so much closer to who I really was. And that has spiraled further and further with as she's aged and as obviously the other two have come along. I feel like motherhood is a really interesting place where you can become more yourself than perhaps before. And I think a lot of women feel lost in motherhood or and I have lots of thoughts about that as well, actually. But yeah, I think it's a place where you can definitely find yourself. But back to the original question. So then I had my second daughter. So she, we weren't sure. I thought for a long time we would just have the one, but then I don't know. I again felt that little niggling, that little calling. There's somebody else wants to come through. I don't know. There's another baby here. So I guess we stopped taking precautions and we just waited to see. And again, not much later after that, I fell pregnant with Clover. So my second daughter, again, a very different experience because obviously I had Ivy, I was already looking after and she was still very young. So she wasn't at school or anything like that. And there was that feeling of, and I think again, a lot of mothers will feel this, is you have your one child and you've been so close and so tight with them for such a long time. And then you have this other one coming along. And so there's all the queries and questions of what if I don't love them the same? Or what if it interrupts the relationship I already have with this pre-existing child? Or what if it, not ruins everything, but, you have these kind of anxious thoughts. But interestingly, it was a really tough pregnancy. And actually the very first scan that I went for, they kind of did the scan and then they took me and my husband and they put us in the grief room.
Oh,
which,
no.
You're in the grief room when you're put in the grief room because it's just, nice quotes on the wall, but they're kind of grief related and sadness related. And you're like, why am I in this room? And the man came back and told us that there was potentially things wrong with the baby and that she may have this, it was some form of cyst that when I went away and Googled it, which of course you can't help yourself but do, it would have meant that the pregnancy was, basically would end before 20 weeks naturally, some really horrible, scary, upsetting things. And so then we had to have a series of tests after that. And thank God she was okay. And they scanned her throughout the pregnancy. And it turned out she did have a duplex kidney, which is something she still has. I guess she will always have. It's like a little issue with the kidney where the kidney is almost like replicated and there can be issues with the tubes coming off and they can get infected and all kinds and get lots of UTIs. So far in her life, it hasn't affected her. So I think she has a mild version. But yeah, so it was quite a scary pregnancy actually with all the scans and the tests and not knowing what was going on. And I was carrying extra water. So I felt absolutely huge. But I did have a really wonderful birth with her in that with my first, I'd really wanted, the kind of as physiological and as natural as I could get the birth to be. And with Ivy, that was not what happened. I was induced and it got really stressful. It went on for about a week in terms of back and forth from the hospital with different attempts of things. And it just wasn't the joyful, magical thing that I wanted it to be. But at least with Clover, I did go into labor spontaneously and ended up having her in 5 hours. And it was really precious and wonderful. And, I just had a bit of gas and air. Whereas with Ivy, I ended up having, what's it called? Epidural.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But whereas with Clover, it was, apart from that bit of gas and air was more or less, the natural birth that I'd been hankering after that I really, really wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was great. And, again, fell in love with her and continued to have tests when she was a little baby, that was challenging.
Yeah.
But, you do what you need to do. And then that was it. I had 2 babies and that was all I was going to have. I had no intention to have any more babies. Every so often we'd think about it and then kind of like, oh, probably too old now or probably, yeah, let's not, don't mess with a good thing, all of those kind of things. And also then, Ivy was 11, Chloe was 8, and, you're moving on with your life and you're not even thinking of having babies actually at the point that I fell pregnant with my little boy.
Yeah, tell us more about that because you thought you were in menopause.
Well, I just assumed I was perimenopausal. Yeah, I was 44 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess you know what we're all grown-ups here, and we all know that if you enter into relations, then there's a potential of getting pregnant. And we weren't taking any precautions, and I guess that's what happened. But I'd kind of thought it wouldn't. Although, again, intriguingly, and bringing back a spiritual element to it, my dad and his wife, they're kind of spiritual hippie type people. They were pagans for a little while and white witches. And over the years, she's always done a pendulum on me. So I don't know if you know what a pendulum is, but it's where you hold like a crystal type thing over your hand and you ask it questions and it goes back and forth and it answers the questions. And so over the years, she's always done that on me, and she's always come up with the answer in terms of what children am I going to have. And it was always, you'll have two girls and a boy if you want him. And I was like, no, I've got my two girls, too old now for this boy. Let's just forget it. Okay. But every time she did it, this would come up. So of course, when I fell pregnant, and again, I think I'd felt his energy around me a few times. And I'd kind of thought, maybe not in this lifetime, let's wait and do that another time. But obviously, once I was pregnant with him, it was like, okay, then. So this boy's coming. I was pretty sure it would be a boy. And I could tell from the scan, actually.
Yeah. Now, did you have any symptoms of menopause or anything like that?
Well, I guess my periods had kind of shifted and changed quite a bit. So I can't remember, it's ages ago now. Like, yeah, I think they shortened. So each period was like 3 days max, sort of from beginning to end. And they weren't like massively out of sync, but they weren't probably as organized as they had been before. And yeah, I guess I just figured I was the age for it.
Yeah. And were you late on your cycle, and that's why you took a pregnancy test?
I took a pregnancy. I don't know if it was COVID, but I'd been very ill over Christmas, like the illest I'd been in years, with a horrible cough, throat, like flu-like. I'd been in bed. My little daughter Clover had it too. We'd both basically just camped out in bed together for nearly 2 weeks. And so I thought that had perhaps sent my period a bit skew, if to be honest. I didn't think I was pregnant. And then it was like the 3rd of January. And I remember it specifically because the kids were due to go back to school the next day. And I remember I just said to my husband, look, it just suddenly occurred to me, could I be pregnant? And I really did not think I would be. So I did send him out to go get a pregnancy test, thinking it was probably just a waste of money. And I was just, just a silly thing. And I might as well just check. And anyway, it wasn't a silly thing. And I could see the line. He couldn't see the line. So he went back out and got some more. And the line was very, very definite. Oh, and it was very cute because we were actually that evening taking the girls out to, they probably do it where in the US as well, but like you'll have a house and it'll all be lit up by lights. So like a manor, not a manor house, like an oldie worldy kind of mansion with grounds and stuff, and they have lights at Christmas and things like that. So we planned to take the girls there. So we're kind of wandering around there with this little secret in our hearts, knowing that I was pregnant. And there was a wishing station. And my 8-year-old, who had for years been wishing that mummy would have another baby, and then had stopped wishing for that because I'd actually had a word with her the year before and said, listen, darling, mummy's too old. I'm not going to have another baby. So, let's maybe not use your wish for something that you're more likely to get. But she wished again for mummy to have a baby. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, your magic is more powerful than mine. It's she definitely manifested it.
Yeah. What were you thinking in those moments when you saw that positive test?
I think I was slightly shell shocked. Very shell shocked. I just, I think with the other two, I'd asked for it, I'd invited it in. It was something we'd kind of were planning and thinking about. Whereas this, it was came from the left field. It was just, it took me a good few weeks really to get my head around it. And I would go from, like, wow, this is amazing and magical, and this is meant to be to absolute terror, which of course you then feel guilty about.
Yes.
But yeah, and eventually it just was what it was. And, that's when I ended up writing a whole book about that entire pregnancy and kind of just sitting with all the different feelings that it brought up, because it was a different experience as well, being so much older and having it. One of the things I've spoken about is just other people's reactions. So when you're 33 and you have a baby, people say, congratulations. When you're 44 and have a baby, people say, are you crazy? Which is really upsetting, actually. And I don't think people mean it, but that's me giving them grace that perhaps sometimes is not due. I don't know. But people do tend to have very strong opinions about other people's pregnancies.
They sure do. It's very strange. Yeah.
Yeah, because they won't comment. People don't come up to me, comment on my marriage or the work I do. And some of the work I do is quite kooky. So they could comment, but they don't. Nobody says anything about anything. But as soon as you're pregnant, there's a lot of opinions come out of the woodwork.
That's for sure. So tell us about your pregnancy. How was it?
Oh, gosh. With Bowie, it was really hard. It was really, I don't know. I think to begin with, I felt sick the whole time.
Like morning sickness.
Yeah, but all day long. And it was quite debilitating. I remember with the girls, I'd get a bit of morning sickness, but I'd kind of, well, with Ivy, I'd quite enjoy it because it's like my little, I know I'm pregnant kind of thing. But with him, it was it felt a lot more intense. It was quite all consuming. I'd get really ridiculously hungry and eat and eat and eat and eat, and then feel so sick, and then end up actually being sick, and just like you can't win. He'd put me off chocolate. I couldn't eat chocolate.
Why?
For the entire pregnancy. It made me feel sick.
How sad.
It just didn't. Yeah. And so, I suppose mentally, you like chocolate, so I'd try and eat some, but it just didn't have the same feeling. It was just not doing what chocolate should do. It was very strange. But apparently I've been told that is a boy thing, that it can, for whatever reason, put you off chocolate. And I felt further on into the pregnancy really debilitated. I guess being so much older, I think you don't think you're older, you think you're the same. And I think I'm quite fit and healthy, but I really felt it. And towards the end, I could barely walk anywhere. I just felt exhausted, so tired and so exhausted and just drained the whole time. And I just wanted to take pleasure in the pregnancy, but it was hard at the end. And also he was breech for a very long time. And that was uncomfortable. And then when he wasn't breech, he'd lay in this weird sideways position, which really tugged on my ribs. So that was uncomfortable too. So that was the most tough pregnancy of all of them.
So what about your doctor? Since your pregnancies were kind of spread out, did you use the same doctor as you did with your girls?
No, we'd moved house. So, I mean, obviously in the UK, we have the NHS system. So we all have doctors' surgeries. And, when you're pregnant, you go to the doctor and then they put you under a midwife or a midwife centre. So back then I would have been at a different midwife centre than I have been with this more recent pregnancy. But then you see the same midwife throughout the pregnancy for just generic checkups and things like that. I think they probably did a few more tests on me with me being older, and there were a few kind of red flags thrown up, particularly at the beginning of the pregnancy.
What were those?
So they do various different tests, and one of them was coming up as the baby having a 1 in 18 chance of Down syndrome, as well as other things, which 1 in 18 is really quite high.
Yeah.
And when that all came out in the wash, I think that was literally based on my age, because when I'd had the blood tests and things like that, the midwife was really surprised, and she said to me, well, none of your blood markers or anything came back in any way that would indicate Down syndrome or any other issue. So it was literally my age. So that somehow got configurated to being a 1
Wow.
in 18 chance, which is it's fine. I understand that there's a truth in there somewhere, but I also understand it gave me a few sleepless nights and quite a lot
Yeah.
of stress. Yeah.
Yeah. Did she mention anything else about your age?
No, they try to say that they don't talk about age and that they don't make a big thing about it. And obviously, there's lots of women now in their 40s having children. But I do think it's an undercurrent. But they
Hmm.
don't make it. They don't verbally make a big thing of it. But I do think it's running throughout the way they look at what needs doing or what they might do.
I agree. And did you find out the sex because you kind of already kind of knew it was a boy?
Wow, I could see it.
Like on the scans.
The first scan, I was like, that looks like a little Willy to me.
How
And
far
then
along were you?
that was it. The first scan. So was that 12 weeks?
Oh my gosh, that early.
I mean, I don't even remember the girls' scans to have been able to compare because it's such a long time ago. But I could just definitely see. Now, it's called nub theory, and I only discovered about, and you may know about this, but I only discovered about nub theory with this child because I'd seen what looked to me like a little penis on the scan. And so I'd asked the guy doing the scanning, and he was like, well, I'm not allowed to say because it's too early and couldn't tell me. But he said some people would say that you're looking at is a boy's nub, yes, but he wouldn't confirm. But I could see for myself. And so there is something, I did look into nub theory, and you can tell it based on the way, because the girls and boys have a nub, I guess, at that point, and it's what direction
Mm.
it's sitting in.
Oh,
So, but then
wow.
we went and had a private scan a little bit further along because we really wanted to get our girls involved and have that kind of excitement and yeah, that was a boy. So yeah.
That's really fun. I love how your your dad's wife was correct. That's
Yeah.
really fun.
Yeah, she's spooky like that.
Now, was there any products or anything that you could recommend that helped you with pregnancy?
Products. Oh my gosh. I guess towards the end, having a ball to bounce on was quite nice.
Hmm.
I haven't really been, oh, it's not really a product, but actually, when the baby was breech for quite a long time, I went to my friend who was an acupuncturist and we got moxa sticks that I had to burn in a certain position on my foot, which I think helped him turn, which
Oh,
was, and
neat.
I think acupuncture actually got me pregnant. Um,
Really?
yeah, which was not purposeful. I didn't go. I went before I was pregnant. I went to my friend who's an acupuncturist for a session just for my general energies. And the effect of that was that my energies did feel heightened and my libido was heightened in a way it perhaps been a bit flat for a while. So I do think that acupuncture is an interesting thing. I'm going to steer clear from for a little while of those places. But yeah, I definitely think that had a serious effect without that being my intention.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of other products, no, I can't think of anything in particular. I've never really used anything, I don't think, particularly.
Okay. And did you have any cravings? What was your diet like? How were you able to exercise very much?
Not so much. No, not with Bo. My exercise went out the window. I felt like I did it with the other two. I did continue exercising, but with him, I just felt just really like I could barely even walk. And I kept thinking throughout the pregnancy, once this sickness is gone, I'm going to do a bit of exercise. But then once the sickness had gone, I just felt shattered and so tired. And if I think I did on occasions do a little bit of exercise and it left me feeling so drained that I felt ill. So it just wasn't working for me in the way that I wanted it to. And I guess the other thing is that I had, two children So I was up and about moving an awful lot. I was doing the school run. So I was getting generic exercise through movement, but anything else on top of that would just leave me feeling so awful that I stopped doing it really.
Yeah. Diet too? What were your cravings, that sort of thing?
I did, with the most recent pregnancy, I didn't really have any cravings, weirdly. But with
Oh.
my previous, no. Do you know, with Ivy, I craved salt and vinegar, ready salted crisps, chips, plain chips. I ate bags and bags of them. With Clover, I salted peanuts. With Bo, I didn't. I'm trying to think. I don't think I had any food cravings, but I did have a craving, which was to read books, which sounds like a funny one, doesn't it? But I just couldn't stop reading. It was like I
Like
was
nonfiction or fiction or
fiction
what?
books, stories,
Okay.
stories like a madwoman. I could not stop reading. It was, but yeah, I don't think I had any. I was kind of off food. Food was a weird thing in that pregnancy. It wasn't really particularly a pleasure in any
Mhm.
respect. So, no.
So for your birth, what was that plan like with your third? What kind of birth were you planning for?
Well, I was hoping, to go into pregnancy, to labor spontaneously. And I guess I would have liked to have had a home birth, or I would have liked to have gone into hospital, have had maybe a water birth. And in the end, I had a cesarean section.
Wow.
Um, yeah. It was, that was by choice in the end, and not a choice I ever thought I'd make, because I always wanted to have, the natural hippified kind of birth without many interventions, with as little intervention as possible. But actually, it was, it became incredibly stressful. My body felt really debilitated, as I've already said. The baby was breech for a very long time, and then he did turn, but he was in a weird position. My cervix wasn't doing anything, so it wasn't doing any of the stuff that I know it done with the previous babies in terms of coming down or stretching or doing anything. I was in and out of hospital for the last couple of weeks, like almost daily, kind of having different appointments and checkups. I had no childcare. This is one of the things with having a child at an older age is my mum was around, but she's 75 now, and she couldn't really do anything. She couldn't really be as much help as she would have liked, and she was getting exhausted. And the whole thing was becoming really unpleasant and really difficult. And so one thing I learned with my first pregnancy was that again, with that first pregnancy with Ivy, I wanted this natural birth and I didn't get it. I ended up being induced and it taking like a week, threats of C-section right up until, the push up at until the pushing point. They were threatening C-sections and it felt like a threat. And so somewhere within that mix, I felt like I lost control. Obviously, with Clover, I had this nice birth, the kind of birth that I'd wanted. And then with Bo, it wasn't happening. And I thought the last thing I'm going to allow at 44 years old, when I'm so exhausted, so drained, and everyone in my family is drained. My eldest has just started high school, like for the first time a few days ago. And, I had to prioritize everybody. It wasn't just about prioritizing me in the way that I had the privilege to do when I was younger. I had to prioritize all of these different people as well as myself. And I had to ask myself, do you firstly want to try and wait for a spontaneous birth when that's like kind of ill-advised to go over 40 weeks? And I'd already gone over 40 weeks by about 5 days or so. Or worse even, do I want to go down the route of induction, having already done that in the past and knowing how traumatic that had become when I had Ivy? Particularly with when I had Ivy, my cervix was doing things. Things were moving in the right direction. With Bo, nothing was happening. So potentially that induction could have been even more difficult. And there were some of the things they were saying to me about his head, the position he was in, and the things that they might have to do, like bearing weight down on top of me and pushing and all kinds of things. I just, there was something in me that just suddenly went, no, 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 no. Ask for a C-section, which again is, I would not have wanted that in the past, but because I was making that choice and it felt really liberating.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked and they said yes. And they booked it in as, it wasn't an emergency C-section, but it was half emergency, is I think how the surgeon put it, because of my age and because of the fact that I'd gone over 40 weeks by quite a bit by this point. So they got me in on a weekend, which they wouldn't normally do.
Wow. I'm surprised they let you go past 40 weeks.
Yeah, that was the thing, is as soon as it got to that 40-week point, they were having me in hospital every day. So I'd be in hospital and go to the maternity assessment unit, and I'd sit there for however many hours it took for them to see me. Bearing in mind, I've got 2 children at home who need me and whose grandma can only do so much.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like, like you're neglecting them. One of them's, like I said before, she's just started high school that week, her very first week in big school. And I couldn't be there because I was in and out of hospital every day for them to monitor the baby, which of course needs doing.
Mm-hmm.
But that it was just something in me was like, just no more. Just, I can't keep, I'm going to give myself grace to choose to do something really different than I thought I ever would do, and honor everybody who's involved, including myself, and just let's get this baby earthside and love him. And how he gets here right now, who cares? That was kind of, because I know a lot of women who haven't chosen C-sections will struggle with it. There's a whole, thing about natural birth being best, particularly if you're coming from, I guess, where I would have been coming from in the past. But actually, I just, having now had 3 children, it's really, birth is just a moment. And one that is actually hugely beyond us, whether we give birth vaginally or via a C-section. It's all kind of surrender to a higher power.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is that you love them when they're here.
Yeah. So walk us through the C-section. You came in on a weekend.
Yeah, they had me in on a Sunday. So I had to be up at like 5 a.m. and get to the hospital. And they had me in scrubs and special silly tights, compression tights. And it could have happened then and there, but I basically sat there all day with my husband. And I think we eventually went in at like 5 o'clock.
Oh my gosh.
Because the thing with it being the weekend was we were priorities, but only second to anybody who came in as an actual emergency. So I wasn't actually in labor. There was nothing, nothing stopped me from sitting there all day. So if somebody came in who desperately needed it for physical reasons, then they came first. So I think a few of those did come in, which is why we then just sat there till 5 o'clock. But which at the time felt really, it was not pleasant, but perhaps easier than being in labor. Its own little weird little labor. I mean, we were in a nice room to begin with, and then they chucked us out of the nice room and put us into a waiting room that was probably about as big as this space I'm sat in now, with another couple practically sat on top of each other, and she was waiting for hers and I was waiting for mine, and it was unpleasant. But
like, were you in scrubs sitting in there, or your regular clothes?
In scrubs, naked under our scrubs. She was sat there with her partner. I was sat with mine. It was a really hot, we were having a heat wave, and there was no windows in this room. It was just a box room. They went and got us a fan, but it was,
Wow.
But then she went in. So then we knew once she'd gone in that I'd be next, as long as nobody else came along. So of course I was next. And it was really super intense, actually. It was insanely intense. Obviously, I've had the 2 other kinds of birth, which were more natural, kind of vaginal births. This was somewhat else, kind of go into a room, and my husband had to stay outside of the room to begin with. So the room looked like, when you see on TV shows, like the old-fashioned kind of surgical rooms with bare bricks on the wall, and it was just big. It almost looked like a kind of room where people get murdered in on like scary shows. It was a strange old room, considering the hospital's quite new. It must have been an old room. It was a bizarre room, but big and echoey and huge, and loads of people in there, like loads of people. There must have been 10 different people. So anaesthetists and nurses and a surgeon and other people. And it just, I think when you go into labor naturally, you're with your own body. Whereas going in for that, other people are doing things to your body. And I think either way, there's a real sense of having to trust and having to hand over to either nature or, in this instance, people with needles.
A true surrender.
Yeah. That felt like I think that felt like the bigger surrender.
Yeah.
Because with labor, particularly with labor with Clover, so when it was spontaneous labor, it does start off kind of okay. Like, oh, I'm having a contraction. I'm going to eat some pizza and this is great. And it builds and builds. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes so all-consuming and so intense. Whereas with a C-section, it's just, so, they're telling you what's going on and you're kind of terrified and you don't know these people and putting needles into you and it's doing things to your body almost immediately. But it's also beyond you. It was kind of scary. I was really scared, actually, if I'm going to be honest. But I remembered, thinking back to my first birth, all the work I did, a lot of hypnobirthing stuff. So I kind of went back to that. And obviously through the years, but I'm a spiritual teacher. I teach women all kinds of spiritual stuff and intuition and breathing and connecting to the body. So I just had to bring myself back to all of that and just really breathe my way through it. And again, just kind of sit with the weird symptoms that, which some of it is feeling like you're really shaking and, the anaesthetism comes right up. You feel it in my throat. I didn't like that. I could feel my throat and my voice sounded different and like I couldn't quite talk and shaky. And yeah, and then knowing as well, you've got the screen in front of you, but you're naked, completely naked with all those people in that room, but you have no sense of that, feeling in that part of yourself is really weird, actually. And I remember one of the guys holding my hands, and I don't know whether he was holding my hand to be nice or whether he was holding my hand to just like monitor something, but I was just really grateful that he was holding my hand. Yeah, and then at some point my husband came in, and that's when they then went to work, which is a strange feeling because you can feel stuff, but you don't know what it is you're feeling. And then there was a lot of tugging. It felt like someone was pulling my ribs out. But it wasn't painful, but just like tugging on my ribs. And then I guess it was a minute or so later that when you hear the cry and then they lift him up and I'm trying to touch him and yeah. And it was just like, it was me and my husband just both burst into tears. It was the most beautiful birth. And I didn't know whether it would be or not. I was a bit nervous, like, will I feel as connected? Will I feel as emotionally compelled as perhaps the other two? But it was just as beautiful. It was incredible. And yeah, and then he was my husband had him in his arms for a while. And then they put us into a back room and, he breastfed and cuddled and had the joy of feeling my legs come back to life over time.
Yeah. Well, how was breastfeeding for you? Did you always feed your girls too?
Yeah, I had them both for like 3 years each, possibly a bit more. Yeah.
Impressive.
I was super committed. But the interesting thing about that is that I thought I knew how to breastfeed because I'd been super mom with the previous two and breastfed them both for like 3 years. There was never an issue. With Bo, he took to it fine, but it wasn't as straightforward. And actually, I realized that, yes, it worked really well with the previous two, but it's like I had to relearn it. And maybe he had a tongue tie, a small, slight tongue tie. I don't know if that played into it. In the early first week or so, he kept losing weight, even though he appeared to be having milk all the time. And we ended up at A&E with him, and I ended up giving him some formula top-ups for a short period of time, just because he was losing weight. And then I realized that the formula top-ups were kind of into. I had a friend come around who's a breastfeeding expert, and she sat and went through the whole thing with me. And I just kept saying, I've done this before. I did it for like combined 6 years. We never had an issue. Why am I having issues now? But I just was a different child. I'm a different mother. I'm older, but I stopped the formula and I just sat and I breastfed and I breastfed and I breastfed, and it eventually kind of kicked in and yeah, did what it was meant to do. But it was, again, a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah. So you're still breastfeeding him now?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you plan to go 3 years again?
I don't know. I don't really plan to stop it until such time as it stops naturally, I suppose. I know with my girls, it was a big comfort thing as well. And I don't think he uses it so much for comfort. I think with my girls, for example, if they'd fall over and needed a cuddle, the first thing they'd want to do is also get the boob out. Whereas when he's had stuff similar, or something set him, he doesn't seem to want to do that. So if he's not using it for comfort and it's just for food, then that might affect how long we go for. I mean, he's eating food now, but still having, quite often breastfeed. So I don't know. I'm open to things being different this time. And plus it is, he's been quite poorly this past couple of weeks. And you start feeling a bit like a life support system. And I started to feel like incredibly drained by it in a way that I hadn't. And I think, again, it's my age showing up differently. And perhaps, so my age could affect when we stop as well.
Yeah.
Or how I feel now might not be how I feel in a year's time. I might actually be menopausal by that point, which may have an effect as well.
That's interesting. I wonder what menopause has an effect on like breast milk and stuff and breastfeeding.
I don't know. It's an interesting question. It's something I should probably go find out about, because even if I'm not menopausal, I must be perimenopausal now. I'm 45, so I'm sure I'm in that pre-phase. So there's only so much hormones going around. And I do feel like my body is doing a lot, for a woman of 45. So it may be that I don't go for as long.
Yeah. Well, how was your recovery from C-section?
I feel like that was the easier recovery of all three.
Really?
I feel like, I was expecting it to be really horrendous, and for me, I didn't think it was. It felt a bit painful, but not massively painful. It's just a bit awkward, if you move it could feel sometimes a bit like a tug, and I was tired. And sometimes I'd push myself a bit too hard and get emotional. But I think in terms of my mental state, I remember after the two girls feeling kind of very soggy, foggy headed for quite a while. I don't know why that is, but I didn't feel the same way with this one. I just felt like I had this injury, and that needed to heal up, and it did. And I guess it took a little while to regroup in terms of, it's like only in the past couple of months I've started doing exercises, and it took a little while to feel stronger doing that. But I think, it hasn't, I feel like slightly it was better.
Wow, that's surprising. Yeah. Now, what about mentally? You said you were foggy with your two girls. Mentally, did you feel any postpartum depression or anything like that?
I think I've been quite lucky with all of them that I don't think I've had postpartum depression. I'd say I've had postpartum intensity. And probably like a bit more intense, a bit more peaked emotions about things. definitely. But I wouldn't say depression. No, I think that's something that for whatever reason, I've just been lucky to escape. And I think, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be right to say this because everybody, I don't know if it's something worth doing, but I just feel like whenever I've had my kids, I just give myself I just really surrender and just go into that, the intensity of a newborn and kind of sit with that and don't fight it. I don't try and fight it because I think if I was to try and fight it or to try and get back to what things were like before, then that would send me mad.
Yeah. Do you have any plans to have a fourth?
No. It's never come up in the pendulum. Do you know what is weird though? It has gone through my head. Like, you could have one more. But I really do think I will not. Just for many reasons in that, we don't even have a bedroom for the one that we currently have. We are one bedroom short. So he's in our room. That's fine for the time being. I'm quite happy with that. But yeah, it would just be, and also how could I feel like I'd be diluting my energies far too much for the children who now already exist. Like, because I've got the two older ones, they do look after themselves a little bit, but then I'd be diluting my attention for him and he really needs me. And I am older. I don't know that I would have it in me, actually. I'm sure I'd find it, but perhaps best not try.
What has been your biggest challenge being pregnant in your 40s?
Just how exhausting it was. I guess I already had children, so I knew of the intensity of that. So I think it would be a challenging thing to have your first child in your 40s, having always lived a life without having a child. So, but also a pleasure, because I do think if you want it, then it's a pleasure. But yeah, and again, the difficulties of people, they upset me quite a few times in early pregnancy when you tell people you're pregnant and they're the same sort of age as you and perhaps their children are grown even, and you get these kind of negative comments that just feels really intrusive. I don't really care what their opinion is, but it's just, I hate the intrusiveness of people feeling that they can pass off a comment even if it's supposed to be a joke. It's not funny,
Yes.
So that was disheartening.
Is there anything you'd recommend that would help prepare someone for pregnancy and birth over 40?
I think anything that you can do to bring yourself into alignment with who you are and confidence within your own decisions. So that might be thinking about, I don't know, going to therapy or doing work on yourself, reading the self-help books, finding your own faith, having your own spirituality. I think all of those things that help you center within yourself have been the things that have been most helpful to me. So I think if you're grown and you've grown with your own life, then it just helps you welcome this new part of life in. Yeah,
I love that. What advice would you give yourself when you're pregnant if you could go back?
I think I don't know if I'd give myself an advice. I think I just want to say, it's all going to be okay. I feel like with my first baby, I knew everything was going to be okay. I had like that. I had this super silly confidence of youth. And with the second baby, even though that got really stressful and scary, I knew it would be okay. But I think not so much with the third one. There was a lot of fear in me with the third one, which some of it is the stuff that gets projected on you because of your age. But I think I would just want to tell myself that it was going to be okay and that, you've got this, those kind of positive affirmations.
Yeah, that's good. Now, a lot of our listeners are trying to conceive. What advice do you have for those women?
Well, I definitely say that give acupuncture a whirl. Yeah. And I think, again, a lot of my work is in the spiritual realms, the sacred realms, the realms of self-discovery. I think anything that you can do at any point in life to look further into who you are, to align with the truths of yourself, to release anything that's no longer serving you, that's toxic, the masks that we wear as women, where we're trying to fit in, whether it's with work, with partners, with family. I think all of those things really dilute us and spread us too thin and put us in different directions, and actually just coming back to a whole idea of who you are is going to be beneficial. Not necessarily, I mean, maybe to conceiving. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I just think anything that brings you into a full alignment with yourself has got to be a powerhouse in terms of helping you approach that pathway to trying to conceive as well.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. Now, you mentioned you wrote a book during your third pregnancy. What inspired that? Tell us more.
I think, okay, so I wrote this book. It was called Soulful Pregnancy, and it's a week by week journey through pregnancy. So within that, you get a little bit of reflection of where I was at with each week, but also a general theme. So there'd be themes about like connecting to the wisdom of your ancestors, or how to deal with other people's opinions, or how to be physically within your body. So what I wanted to provide for people and for myself really was a kind of touchstone to something that's looking at pregnancy as a place where a woman can grow and become more herself in preparation of becoming a mother, or becoming a mother again. Because I think I felt I really needed that. I really needed to go back to basics and really think, okay, so pregnancy is almost like this unique vision quest, this magical space out of time where your body's doing this most incredible thing, and it can be disconcerting and scary and miraculous and wonderful at the same time. And I just feel like there's a huge amount of energy there to be explored from a spiritual and creative perspective, and that will help the pregnant person to really get to know herself and to get to know where her intuition is and what her intuition feels like and sounds like, and how she's going to then take that forward into the next big adventure, which is being a mother to this particular child. So the book really is an adventure that anybody can follow. So with different themes every week, and a different creative practice, a different soulful practice, an affirmation and a meditation to work with week by week as you move through your pregnancy. So they're a bit different from the normal pregnancy books, which might be more like physically based, as in what's going on with your body and how big is your baby? Is it a cabbage or is it an avocado?
Yeah.
Something a little bit different from that. That's a bit more internal and sacred, really.
Yeah, that's what I really appreciated about it. I do love that it's by week, but I think I also started off with 8 weeks, and it asked you about your high school self. And I was like, oh, wow, I have so much to tell her. It really kind of puts you to that deeper level. I really liked that.
Yeah, I think pregnancy is a bit of an initiation. And I think as women, as a culture, we've lost those initiations that perhaps we would have had in the past. Mm-hmm. And if you have 40 weeks, that is a set space in time where you're doing this incredible thing within you, then why not also absorb that through your own understandings and come out maybe a little bit different, a little bit changed, a little bit more ready, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Where can our listeners find your book at?
They should be able to find it at all kinds of places. It's released on the 21st of June, so I think it'll be out in the world by now. So in the US, it's distributed by Red Wheel Visor. You can get it from Amazon, get it from any bookstore, should be able to order it in, or get hold of a copy in most places. And it's published by Womancraft Publishing. They also send them out.
Awesome. Would you like to share your Instagram account and social media stuff?
It's Alice Grist. It's ALICEGRIST. Yeah, that's where you'll find me over on Instagram.
Perfect. Well, Alice, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And that wraps up another great episode on Over 40 Fabulous and Pregnant podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next Monday.
When I wanna cry, in a world gone mad, we're on an all-time
I can't help but notice that my name down the bottom of this says alpha males.
It does.
That's my daughter's again. So I don't know if I can change that, but it's not alpha males.